You know, I thought I was done with you. I thought I'd use you for a brief sight gag demonstrating how hard it is to actually do horror convincingly, and then you'd just sit there on my shelf as a nice collector's item. But then everybody had to complain that you were more or less a red herring in The Conjuring, and then you had to start throwing a hissy fit with the studio, so now you have your own movie. Are you satisfied? Hey, let's not say anything that we can't take back. You were lucky, that's all. Nobody wants to read a teen romance novel featuring a killer doll that's possessed by a member of the Manson family, let alone would they want to see a movie that was a teen romance story about a killer doll possessed by a member of the Manson family. Nobody wants that. Well, we're not in Japan now, are we? Okay, that was uncalled for. Oh, hello there. Just some personal business. Pay it no mind. Oh, that is it! I was pretty worried going into this film because I know it's not directed by James Wan, who directed The Conjuring, that this film is a prequel to. Then there's always the old axiom of sequels never being as good as the films they are following. As such, I had pretty low expectations going in. Coming out of it, I wasn't really surprised, but I wasn't disappointed either. I mean, this film pretty much delivers exactly what you would expect from a contemporary horror film, for better and for worse. When it came to the stuff that I liked about the film, I can commend it on the fact that it at least kept itself consistent with what was established in The Conjuring, with kind of the, for lack of a better term, rules and settings, which tends to be a problem with a lot of horror film sequels. I can also commend the film for having some genuinely scary moments. That said, the story and even the nature of the scares themselves were pretty predictable. Some of those scary moments and even just some of the scenes just came across as a bit desperate, like they were trying to recapture what they had in The Conjuring, but forgot to add some of the more subtle moments that made that film work. Part of that may be attributed to the fact that we don't really have anybody investigating anything, which pretty much takes away a good chunk of the opportunity for some of the eerie moments, at least a lot of the eerie moments that weren't scary, but just left you unnerved during much of The Conjuring. But we don't really have that since we're stuck with only the reactions of the victims. It doesn't help that the film decides to go over the top, almost to the point of breaking the suspension of disbelief. I mean, by putting a face to the demon that's causing all the trouble, you take away some of the menace, you take away some of the fear. Not to mention the look of the completely made-up actor caused some members of the audience to start laughing out loud. The story as a whole wasn't even particularly satisfying. Mainly, aside from the predictability, there were some plot elements that just didn't feel particularly inspired. To me, the whole murderous satanic cult trying to summon a demon thing just feels like a bit of a cop-out, like they were trying to come up with some way to put an evil spirit in the doll, and then just opted for something that could just be explained in literally 2 seconds, without really developing it particularly well. I mean, I could kind of see what they were going for, trying to do the whole, oh, it's pretty much like the Manson family murders, but it only introduces the concept and then just does nothing with it. On top of that, the way it all gets resolved is a bit slapdash, a bit rushed, and pretty much just comes across as a deus ex machina. I understand they were kind of trying to copy The Exorcist again by giving this film a similar ending, but it wasn't executed particularly well. And what hurts even more is that you don't really see the characters, the main characters, go through any major change as a result of the events. They almost get to kind of go back to their happy little lives. They pretty much get a happy ending, which I know a lot of people think, well, there's nothing wrong with happy endings, but it just made me think, what was the point of it all? I mean, if they hadn't encountered the doll, would anything have really changed? I mean, yeah, things would have changed, but it was still a case of, did it really matter, is more what I'm trying to get at. You just didn't really see any major changes or really any reason why the story needed to happen. Overall, it's an okay film, but it's not as good as The Conjuring. I may have faulted that film for having kind of a cluttered storyline with having the 2 major plot lines with the Warrens and the family that was being haunted, but at least the adversary they were dealing with had a more believable origin and was just more of a force to be reckoned with. Personally, I think this doll really should have just stayed as a red herring, because really, did anybody even really want the story of the doll? I mean, yeah, it was kind of frustrating that they featured her in the teaser. I mean, even made a frickin' merchandise thing out of it, but never really did anything with it. But really, the story wasn't really a story anybody wanted in the first place. Now, as a standalone horror film, as, like, completely disregarding the fact that it was a prequel to The Conjuring, it's decent. It has some decent scares, and will pretty much satisfy you if you're looking for just a horror film to see in theaters, but it doesn't really bring anything new to the table. It doesn't really stand out. It just pretty much feels like all the other mediocre horror films out there. So if you're wanting to see this in theaters, don't pay full price for it. See it at a matinee or at a dollar theater if at all possible. Personally, I'd probably just wait for it to come to Netflix. Yeah, Halloween may be over by then, but I wouldn't want to pay to see it in theaters. That's all I say. All that said, Annabelle gets a 3 out of 5. So that's it for this episode of Romney's Reviews. Thank you for watching. I'll see you all next time.